Welcome to Marvelous Disney, the podcast that discusses the most recent doings at one of the more dynamic divisions of the Walt Disney Company, which is, of course, Marvel Entertainment. This is entertainment writer Jim Hill, and my co-host, the amazing Aaron Adams, and I are recording this week's episode on March 22nd, 2021. So I have to ask, Aaron, what were your priorities this past weekend? Were we watching episode 1 of Falcon and the Winter Soldier on Disney Plus, or were we over on HBO Max watching the Snyder Cut of Justice League?
To quote a character from Futurama, why not Zoidberg? Which means both. Why not do both?
Okay. I always appreciate anyone who can shoehorn Dr. Zoidberg into any conversation.
Well, exactly. Whenever my wife and I have a tough decision, we usually end up defaulting with "Why not Zoidberg?" which means we'll have both, whatever it is.
Okay. I have to admit, I held off on the Snyder Cut this past weekend in particular. I didn't have 4 hours to spare, but I also worried that. Is this going to be Blade Runner revisited? Remember how,
where you get 4 cuts of it? Yeah.
Yeah, what was it? The original released to theaters in 82, then there was the domestic version, the international cut, the
director's cut.
In 92, then there was the final cut in 2007. And it's just sort of like...
With the Snyder Cut, I feel that it's really unfair to compare like the theatrical version to it, because it's not like... Zack Snyder's original vision was going to get 4 hours of screen time across U.S. cinemas. That was never going to happen. So, I mean, it's great that he got to go hog wild and do all the extra bells and whistles. Like, I'm a glutton, so if you can add more on top of it, fine. Go ahead and add more. And I did enjoy it. I mean, it was different. There was, you saw the beats that were the same. You saw what wasn't there, so you know what Joss ended up adding by proxy. And so in comparison, I did enjoy it, but I really, really wonder what it would have been if he had a 2.5 hour theatrical restriction runtime limit like a real movie. Because it wouldn't be the same thing at all. And it would feel kind of choppy and truncated and lopped off in places as a result of that.
No, I get that. In fact, I may not have watched the film, but I have... I have read virtually everything, and I know about the expanded screen time and storyline for Flash. Likewise, evidently, Cyborg particularly. Right. That story gets filled out, and, we get a different take on Wonder Woman, likewise Aquaman. But at the same time, the fact that if that film had been successful and Warner's had decided to continue down that road, particularly at the end credit scenes, we hint at, what was it, Justice League 2, Justice League 3?
Oh, sure. That was going to be the whole idea, was to build a big, huge, epic, never-ending saga, and these characters would come back forever and ever and ever, amen. But I want to know from all of our Marvel fans out there that did watch Justice League, when Wonder Woman is telling the story of the old gods, and they get Darkseid an axe in the shoulder, how many Marvel fans muttered to themselves, should have went for the head? I mean, it was the exact same thing. It was the exact same scene, right? It was. We all know it was. We're not going to point fingers or anything like that, but we all said it. Come on.
Wow. Oh, great insight. So again, the Snyder Cut of the Justice League dropped on HBO Max on the 18th. I also want to point out, though, that on that same day, there was a Why Not Zoidberg, rather than... watching, Falcon and the Winter Soldier or the Snyder Cut, you could also go to A Touch of Disney, which was this ticketed experience that was offered at California Adventure. Aaron, it was mostly a food and merch event. I mean, all of the ride shows and attractions inside of California were closed down. But for a lot of Marvel fans who went to this event, the big draw was that this is as close as they've been able to get for months to the Avengers campus at that theme park.
I saw a couple of photos online that look like they're taken through some shrubbery.
Yes, lots.
Okay, all right.
Lots of, The
big news was shrubbery with a hint of a Quinjet in the background.
Well, yes, and that, and a 40s period billboard on the side of the old Stark Motors factory. I want to say the catchphrase is taking automobiles to new heights, which is supposed to reference the flying car that we get to see Howard Stark demoing.
Did anyone ever tell Howard, by the way, we do have airplanes?
Well, but the other thing that Marvel fans were fascinated by, in addition to getting these peeks of the land and that sort of thing, the construction fence that circles the still closed off Anaheim version of the Avengers campus had now been all themed to promote Black Widow. So there were logos up for Taskmaster, Red Guardian, and of course Black Widow. And I promised myself going into the show we would not dwell on this, but
here we are dwelling on this.
Well, I mean, I feel like, again, we're a news show. Oh, speaking of which, I've neglected to do this to this point. The news portion of today's show, today's Marvelous Disney, is brought to you by Storybook Destination, trusted travel partner of the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. For a worry-free travel experience, please book online at storybooksdestinations.com. Anyway, because we are a news podcast, we have to talk about the shareholders meeting that was held. And in fact, I think it happened the day after you are going to record our last show, Aaron. And at that presentation, Bob Chapek, the head of Disney, got asked, what's going on with Black Widow? What about this May 7th release date? And Chapek said that it will be a theatrical release, not a Disney Plus premium access release. That said, when another person came at him with basically the same question, Chapek would not refrain from nailing in the May 7th release date. He then talked about, we have to have a need for flexibility here, that Disney had to take into account when making a decision like this, that situations and conditions change. Here's a direct quote from the presentation. Just a few weeks ago, the theaters in New York and Los Angeles weren't even open, and now all of a sudden they're open. So we're waiting to see exactly how guests and prospective theatergoers react to these reopenings. We're going to remain flexible. We're going to make the call probably at the last minute in terms of how these films come to market, whether it's Black Widow or any other title. As you know, we've had unbelievable success at theaters, and we believe that the going to the theater and seeing a movie with a large audience experience is an important component when it comes to building our franchises. But at the same time, we don't think it's the only way to do that. So we're going to remain flexible, and we're going to see what happens over the next couple months. So
it sounds like they're going to leave the door open for Disney Plus, which is where you give Disney Plus some money for your monthly subscription, plus a little bit more to watch a movie that should have been in theaters.
The way it's been explained to me is that the weird thing with Black Widow is what happens with Godzilla versus Kong is going to have a big impact on Disney's decision-making. Now, that's released internationally on March 24th, and then it shows up in theaters here in the States on March 31st.
Oh my God, that's a horrible litmus test because the game's already rigged for HBO Max to favor that win over theaters. Because you've got an option of, do I have to go to a theater or can I get it on HBO Max? Whereas Black Widow by itself was theater only. And now they're going to sit there and look at something that had another option the whole time and then maybe change their mind. And we already know, like, if you watched, well, I'm sure that Zack Snyder's Justice League got more than 10 viewers. HBO Max probably got some new subscribers so that those people could see that event. And then they probably turned off HBO Max and aren't going to watch it for another week because, if they wanted to be there, they would already be there. There was a thing that brought them there. That was the Snyder Cut. They bought their ticket. They watched it. Now, they're done with it, unless something amazing comes along, which, lo and behold, Godzilla versus Kong. Because, as we've discussed before, HBO Max has got a stranglehold on the theater chains because they've got the release to everything for the, next year. And that's not a fair comparison to when Disney was going to say, for our Marvel movie, it's going to be theater only. Theater only, and then we get really close to the date, and I see why they would do it, because if you look at their calendar, the way that they've got everything staggered for the way that all the Marvel shows come out, they've got no place to move the girl. So of course it's going to be, what's our next option? Disney Plus.
One other thing to take into consideration here is that Godzilla vs. Kong opens a full week ahead of the debut in the States, which again, same day that it shows up on HBO Max. And the Marvel movies typically make 60 to 70% of their ticket sales overseas. And the other thing, or at least it was explained to me, is that with the COVID surge that's going on yet again in Europe, this is supposedly the third surge at this point, and schools are being forced to close and cafes are being shuttered in theaters and the like. JPEG has to take the big picture into account. And it's, yes, the theaters in LA and New York are open, but if the theaters overseas aren't open, and that's where we make the bulk of our dough in these Marvel movies, what's the sense of opening it on May 7th? So,
are we taking bets, by the way, on this? Do we have any odds? What do you think? Is it going to release on May 7th, or is it going to get pushed, or is it going to go to Disney++? Where would you lay your money right this second? If I said, here's 5 free betting dollars, where are you going to put them? What square?
Well, as I was prepping the show tonight, I had ABC News on in the background, and they were talking about, what's been going on in Miami with the issues they're having there with COVID. And I just have an uneasy feeling that we're going to see another surge here in the States, and that's going to impact the decision making.
You're putting your 5 free dollars on push to another date.
I am putting, yes.
Okay,
so.
I'm putting mine on Disney++. I don't think they've got a place to move it to. So we'll compare in a couple months' time and see what happens with the results.
That works. All right, let's go to our happier topic. I remember on our last show, Aaron and I were talking about Kevin Feige when he was talking at the Winter 2021 press event for the Television Critics Association, was letting folks know that they should anticipate that some of the limited series that Marvel Studios is doing may get a season 2 or even a season 3. Well, literally an hour or so before Aaron and I recorded, Variety reported that the about-to-wrap production Hawkeye limited series, which, by the way, I keep hearing from folks in Atlanta about this crazy car chase that they've been shooting down there for weeks. But anyway, there's supposedly Hawkeye's getting a spin-off. Variety reports that Etienne Cohen and Emily Cohen have been hired to write and executive produce Echo, which is about a deaf Native American character who has the ability to perfectly copy another person's movements or fighting style, which makes Echo a formidable opponent in battle. Evidently, this Marvel fan favorite will make her debut in the season 1 of Hawkeye, and then from there, will step off into her own shows. And this is fairly far along. Alquia Cox has been hired to play Echo, a.k.a. Maya Lopez. And it's worth noting here that at least in the Marvel comic book realm, Echo has previously crossed paths with Moon Knight. So maybe Miss Cox will put in an appearance on that Oscar Isaac's limited series.
I don't know if Marvel's brave enough to cross over their characters into another show. That's risky.
Yeah, what are the chances of that happening?
Exactly. As we move on to the Moon Knight news.
There we go. Oscar Isaacs has decided to show the world out ahead of Moon Knight what he's been up to. And on Instagram, just this past weekend, he posted a video where he shows off some of his combat training that he's been doing out ahead of shooting of Moon Knight. And it's definitely a departure from Poe Dameron, right down to his man bun and his scruffy beard. Speaking of limited series, you probably noticed by this point that Aaron and I have not spent a lot of time talking about Falcon and the Winter Soldier, not yet anyway. Once Aaron and I get back from break, we will be discussing the first installment in detail, and we'll be back in a sec.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana lets you buy your next car on your terms. Explore a massive inventory online, filter for what matters, and find your perfect match. Then choose delivery to your home or pick it up at one of Carvana's iconic car vending machines. Every car also comes with a 7-day money-back guarantee, so you can make sure it's the right fit. Buy your car on Carvana. Delivery or pickup fees may apply. Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Carvana.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Healthcare professionals can lead their careers with LinkedIn. Discover jobs by specialty, preferred shifts, and even desired salary. From mental health therapists to radiology technicians, it's now faster and easier for healthcare professionals to find the right fit. Learn more at linkedin.com/healthcare. Side effects may include faster job placement, improved work-life balance, and increased career satisfaction.
Before we get into the Falcon and the Winter Soldier stuff, Wanted to ask, Aaron, did you get to see Assembled, the special about the making of WandaVision?
Yes, and I wish they would have spent more time on the sound department, because I thought they had a lot more that they could have dove into that would have been very interesting for the casual viewer. You didn't have to be a sound nut to get some appreciation for where they could have gone with it. But I was craving just that little bit more, and I figured if you're not having to deal with time slots and commercial breaks and, the traditional network format, why not go a little bit deeper? I mean, you had, like you'd said, Mandalorian, you get 8 episodes of behind the scenes for it, and WandaVision, here's a good hour or so. And it's like, I appreciate that hour, and I just want more of it.
As you mentioned, season 1 of The Mandalorian was 8 episodes, and they did 8 episodes of the Disney Gallery, giving you an in-depth behind-the-scenes look at that, that first season
and then
of the
season
show.
2, it was completely truncated, right?
It was 1 episode. I mean, it was, it was a decent episode, but in fact, I'm sitting here holding the last issue of Cinefex magazine, issue number 172. They just couldn't make it in the COVID space. So this great behind-the-scenes effects magazine is shutting down production. But they went out on top. They have an amazing issue about the making of The Mandalorian. And there's stories in here about season 2 that I wish they had discussed in that making of special. But evidently this is the new mindset at Disney Plus. It's like, we'll do the 1 hour version. That said, I did enjoy a lot of what I learned about WandaVision. In fact, there was that great story about the effects guys and how hesitant the director was to go to these guys who'd worked on Endgame, sort of the state of the art for effects. And he was hesitant to go to these guys because he wanted them to do cheesy, Bewitched era effects. And
wire gags that, where you physically hang it from the ceiling and shake it around off a stick.
It turned out these guys had apprenticed back in the day on shows like Bewitched. And in a weird sort of way, they were delighted to, I know how to do that. I did that back in the day. So it was old home week, so to speak. They knew exactly how to do the fishing line and to make all the effects work. Likewise, Elizabeth Olsen, for her, being there for the live shoot for the I Love Lucy, Dick Van Dyke inspired episode where they had the live audience, it brought her back to when she was a little kid and would be taken by her mom to the set of Full House to watch her 2 sisters shoot in front of a live audience. And so it's like, wow, I know this. I've seen this. Likewise, I think you and I have talked about Deborah Jo Rupp from the 70s show. It always fascinates me about why people sometimes take jobs. And in this case, Deborah Jo had let her nephews know that, the people at Disney reached out to me about WandaVision. And was it her nephew who said he'd never speak to her again unless she took this job?
Yeah, I think it was a nephew.
Yeah. So it's like, I'm here. Beyond that, to then talk with Elizabeth and Catherine Hahn, talk about the flying scenes in the show and how after they got used to the corsets and everything they had to be strapped in to do it, how they really, got off on the flying scenes, how much time they spent up in the air and everything they had to do to pull off the flying stuff. I don't think this was mentioned as part of the show, but I came across a story this week about there was a scene that was shot for the final either episode 8 or episode 9. I'm not sure on the exact breakdown of it. But supposedly there was a scene where Monica Rambeau, Pietro Maximoff, the Ralph Boner character, and then Vision and Wanda's 2 kids, Billy and Tommy, actually break into Agatha's basement and find the witch's dungeon as they're looking for Wanda. And I guess they attempt to steal the Darkhold, and it's at that moment that they find out that Senior Scratchy, Agatha's rabbit, is actually a demon. And supposedly this was completely shot. They began effects work on it. But it was one of these things where, again, in our COVID world, just finishing the scene, and when you have to, you have this locked-in release date from the folks at Disney Plus, it was like, we have to to put our assets elsewhere. So
Right. We don't have time to finish it, but it's not necessary to the overall story, so
there we
cut
go.
it.
There we go. So just wonder if that will turn up at some point in, because as I understand it, given how hugely popular WandaVision is, I guess there's already talk, at least on the Walt Disney Home Entertainment division, about Blu-rays, DVDs, and the like. Also, I want to just touch base about the Legend short film pieces that were done out ahead of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And I was confessing this to Aaron prior to us recording tonight, and I am genuinely embarrassed to admit that the on your left thing that Sam Wilson says before he comes through the portal in Endgame is actually referencing Captain America repeatedly passing Sam as he runs around the reflecting pool at the Lincoln Memorial, right?
Yep. And you should feel shame. Here's your penance. You got to do 4 Winter Soldiers. They're kind of like Hail Marys, but you got to sit down and watch the Winter Soldier 4 times, and that will absolve you of this particular sin.
Okay, I would actually be willing to do that. I genuinely enjoyed Winter Soldier with its kind of all the President's Men kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, though, news just broke an hour ago over at Deadline. This is already a huge success. Deadline reported that Disney Plus says that Falcon and the Winter Soldier ranks as the most watched series premiere ever for that streaming service during its opening weekend, which was Friday, March 19th through Sunday, March 22nd, and is the most watched title overall for the same time period on a global basis, which includes the Disney Plus Hotstar markets. So, mind you, no actual viewership numbers were shared with the entertainment press, but that's what Disney's saying out ahead of this. So, Aaron, you were nice enough a day or so ago to share your thoughts initially on this. Do you want to start things off with your take on episode 1?
Well, cut to the quick of it. I'm glad on episode 1 I've got a story that I can listen to and be fully engaged in, and I don't have any guesswork to do. I mean, if that was my only gripe with WandaVision, so be it. But it was really refreshing to just go, comfortable slippers. A story I know that I can follow very easily. Not that WandaVision was any taxing mental challenge to get around. Just first couple episodes didn't go anywhere particularly. So I was happy about that. We get to see Falcon starting off with high-flying action, so that was extraordinary. Now, when we see the thing with the helicopters where they take the guy hostage and they fly with their wingsuits through the air and they dive into the side of a helicopter with wingsuits, I said, now that was some incredible effects work to make it look so real. And I had just read yesterday from one of the creatives of the show that they actually got a real person crazy enough to put on a wingsuit and dive within feet of a moving helicopter blade and dive into a side of a helicopter, not once but twice, so they could get it for 2 different shots. That was amazing. And then they said that they were looking online to find stunts, amazing things that people had done with these GoPro cameras and wingsuits and whatnot. And they saw some guys go through these amazingly narrow places, and I think they may have even done something very similar to, if not that helicopter gag. And so they had reached out to him like, hey, you want to do that for the show? And they said, yep. And they did that. But also you'll notice some stylings of when they show Falcon and they have the camera like directly in front of his face, and it's kind of almost got that fishbowl lens kind of quality. And that's kind of the GoPro look of, you put a little itty bitty camera on a stick, mount it in front of your face, go down a mountain at 1,000 miles an hour and scream your bloody head off. So the look and the style of some of the choices that they made during that opening sequence were taken from real stuff. And there wasn't as much visual effects as one might believe during some of those really crazy stunts that I just thought there's no way that they could get enough insurance in the world to do that.
But they didn't start with that. They started with the Sam Wilson character at home, the ironing a shirt and clearly getting ready to go someplace. And he packs away the Captain America Shield in the carry case that Cap himself presented to Sam with Bucky looking on at the end of Endgame. And they even ran the dialogue from that scene underneath. What does it feel like? Like it belongs to somebody else. And they included the Cap line. Well, it doesn't. They used that scene to show that this was a conflicted character who literally didn't believe he was worthy of Cap's mantle.
He was doing the Superman 2, Spider-Man 2, I'm not worthy of the power, I'm going to set it aside and say, no, I'm not going to go that path. And then he's going to have to pick it up by the end of the show, right? That's the always the course of the hero in this type of circumstance, right?
Well, and what's interesting is Anthony Mackie did some interviews out ahead of the debut of the show. His take on Sam is like, look, he was a fan of Captain America like everybody else. Sam Wilson was a regular guy who won the lottery because when Black Widow and Captain America knocked on his door and needed a place to hide, he was home. And that's how he became the Falcon. But what I love, the wonderful juxtaposition there is that we go from that scene to the wonderful scene of trying to rescue the guy from the plane and the helicopter, along the Tunisia and Libya border, and showing that Sam is a legitimate hero. That
he don't need no shield.
No, that's it exactly. And in fact, this is also where we get to meet the First Lieutenant, the Joaquin Torres character that Danny Ramirez plays. And I thought the follow-up scene for this was also interesting because we're all learning the characters at this point. And at that point, did you trust Danny? What was your take on how
the kid on the ground during the flying scene? Yeah. No, you know what? I really enjoyed that they're working with the government agency as backup support, but having the support team now almost showcases how misused the agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. were, because I can see that being any one of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents backing up one of our regular heroes. They should have had that linked kind of quality, and now we've got these new guys from, I don't even know what branch he's in.
Yeah.
But he's someone so new, and throughout the course of that episode, I grew to like him through his actions. I feel he's a trustworthy, on the right side, not the double agent kind of character. So I'm hoping for good from him, but it was always like, man, if they would have done this with Mac as, backup, it would have fit. You know what I mean?
I know.
During that flying scene, I do have to say now that I do believe that Anthony Mackie does put on a backpack with wings to go to work every day, because it looked great. It was exhilarating to watch. I really enjoyed that whole thing. It was great to have Don Cheadle show up in the beginning as a backup character. You know what I mean? Like it's like you're go through a war. I would imagine if someone's been through a tour of duty, they've got brothers for life that they've experienced the thing that only they share on this planet. Only them.
I am so glad you brought up Don Cheadle, because that scene where we get Sam going to the Department of Defense and he's there supposedly handing off the Captain America shield so it can be permanently put on display in the Captain America exhibit. I believe we've established that was at the Smithsonian or something like that.
Right.
But Don Cheadle is Rhodey in that scene without really saying it. It's like, this is a bad idea. You should hang on to that shield. You were given that shield, and the world needs heroes now, and you are worthy of this mantle. But the fact that Sam felt this was the right thing to do, and Rhodey doesn't press him on it. It's like, okay, this is your decision.
You needed him to kind of like help kind of back him up and say, you're worthy. So it wasn't just, you don't want it to be an ego thing. Like, yes, I'm good enough to be Captain America. It's kind of, you got to have a huge ego to say that. So the main character can't say it himself. He's got to have one of his close friends that knows him, on a more intimate level of where his moral code is, to say, yes, you are indeed worthy. I do have to ask, though, do you think Chris Evans gets any credit for his use of his face everywhere in the Cap Museum, or is he just Cap from now on? Like, they can pull his high school pictures and go, hey, I remember Cap from that one party at the, how does that work? Does he wasn't in the credits as far as I saw.
A couple of months ago, we had that interesting exchange where the news broke that Evans was supposedly coming back, and again, I think you were the one who pointed out that Chris immediately tweeted out, news to me. So would that be part of the old contract or the new contract? By the way, we're using your face again.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to come to the set. I mean, if you thought that the contract says if you don't have to get on a plane and come here for anything and we can just use an old photo, you don't get no more money.
Right. Okay, now we've talked about the Falcon. It's now time to talk about the Winter Soldier, which throughout the entire first episode, these two characters are not in the same place at the same time. And both of them are facing challenges. What did you think of when it was revealed that Bucky was in therapy, or in somewhat reluctantly in therapy?
The psychological sparring with the Doctor is a fun way to get inside the head of your hero. You got to do something to tell the story, right? So, I mean, you got to find the shorthand. And they started off, they had a nice, powerful intro for him where they show him in battle, and you're like, yeah, there's Winter Soldier kicking butt and taking names. And then the way that they introduce him ends, and they don't quite say he did the bad thing, but you feel he did the bad thing.
Yeah.
So then to be in treatment and to find out that Bucky has a My Name is Earl list, I thought was really funny.
Yeah.
And the humor stopped as soon as you find out exactly why certain things take place in the episode and one name is on the list and you go, oh, that is sad. And now you've got all this, a big old bowl of boiling empathy for the character, right?
No, absolutely. But it's going to be kind of intriguing because it's also one of these situations where it's like, how can he possibly make this right this many years after the fact?
You can't make it right. All you can do is say, I did it, and I'm sorry, and accept the repercussions of whatever that person throws at your head that happens to be within reach at that moment. And, yeah, that's sad. But you know what? The thing that I'm enjoying about that is I don't think we would have ever gotten that character depth in a Marvel film. I think we needed the space of episodes to break this up into bite-sized pieces where they gotta, you can't just have action and explosions and fighting. You've got to have a character arc. We can't just have them go on a mission but not be changed at the end of it. Otherwise, our heroes remain stagnant, and we don't want stagnant heroes. And Falcon and his family and their boat that leads to an awkward scene at a bank was Michael Scott running this bank here. Shut that guy up.
Well, but now it's interesting that you bring up the scene at the bank, because one of the things I genuinely enjoyed about the first episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier is when they'd refer to the blip, the 5 years where half the population of the Earth was elsewhere. And it was an interesting bend on the fact that here was Sam and his sister Sarah trying to get a loan from a banker who was clearly enthusiastic that the Falcon was there right in front of him and, wanted a selfie and all that. But he then turns him down because he's looking at the past 5 years of his credit history and he doesn't have one. It's like, well, yeah, I was blipped.
Bank don't care if you've been blipped off the planet for 5 years and come back. You ain't got no credit.
Yeah, and it just sort of like, in a weird sort of thing that felt so real for today's world.
It's like, yeah, you are aware that half the world just went away for 5 years and came back, and they're like, yep, absolutely, don't care.
Yeah.
Not our problem, it's your problem.
Which brings us to the big bad, or what's being set up to be the villains of this thing, the Flag Smashers. And evidently it's this secretive group that believes the world was better during the blip and now wants to restore that world without borders. And we now go back to Lieutenant Torres, who's somehow managed to be, that there's sort of a cultish surrounding of the Flag Smashers and manages to be in the right place at the right time when the Flag Smashers are breaking into some sort of financial institution in Switzerland and attempting to make off with two giant duffel bags full of something of value. And so Torres attempts to take somebody down who is very quickly revealed to be superpowered. But let's talk about how this episode actually ends, with Torres reaching out to Sam, sharing this info, and then Sarah comes into the room and it's like, you got to come watch something. And the two of them stand there in front of the television. And we're back at the Department of Defense. In fact, we start this thing off with the gentleman who Sam gave the shield to, the Department of Defense representative in front of a podium giving a speech about how America needs heroes again. And suddenly, here's the new Captain America, John Walker.
I will only refer to him as U.S. Agent.
There we go.
I will not tarnish the Captain America name by linking the two. I will, he's U.S. Agent in my brain. That's it.
Okay. And Sam Wilson's face as this particular episode ends.
Twitter's overall face matched. There was a whole lot of that ain't my Cap going on. Mm-hmm. Did you see, is it Carl from Up?
Yes.
There was a lot of pictures of people putting Carl with a Captain America hat on it. And if you put the two side by side, my goodness, there's a comparison.
It is an unfortunate chin, isn't it?
Yeah.
But again, Sam's face of just the emotions that played over, and you should get the sense that I got played. I handed over the shield and I got played. It's a very interesting place to leave off because episode 1 ends. We've got Sam and Bucky in different places. We have no Baron Zemo. We have no Agent 13, Sharon Carter. And Kerry Scoglin, the series director and the executive producer, stressed right from the beginning. It's like, look, from the beginning, we were making a 6-hour-long movie. I'm just fascinated to see where they go from here.
There's no fat on this tissue. It is all lean. I mean, everything about it is telling story. Mm-hmm. And even if it's the bank scene, it's telling us of the state of the overall MCU and how people are treated pre-blip and post-blip. There's a lot of this that we didn't really get that nuance in Spider-Man Far From Home when they just, come back. We got a little opening scene where they were doing their news and they go, well, the band was in the gym and then they were gone and then they were back again. And here's your Spider-Man movie. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of all they ever did about the blip in that movie. So here you get a little bit more. And we also did get to see that in WandaVision when Monica Rambeau comes back in that one opening moment.
Yes. Yeah.
And a lot of those moments, that gave a huge amount of instant emotion because we knew what was happening when we saw her not dissolve but resolve, just form from the dust and come back. And then there's all the chaos in the hospital. And exactly in the Marvel shorthand, exactly what's happening in that moment. And I think that's one of those nice things about having these longer 6 hours. We break them up into episodes, but we get room to breathe. We get room to explore those little corners.
You have nailed what we're seeing now just on the back of WandaVision, coupled with just a little taste of things we've gotten so far of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That very thing, that stories that get to breathe. It's like, I can't help but think of that scene in the library between Vision and White Vision, where they have the philosophical discussion about, I'm blanking the name of the ship of Theseus. I think you and I talked about this with the runtimes of Infinity War and Endgame, that it was almost admirable that there would be these little quiet character moments, but you had a 3-hour runtime and you could do that. And you were just a few minutes ago alluding to here's the Snyder Cut with its 4 hours, but could these beats have made it into a 2.5-hour version of this movie? And I really like this take on the superhero world. In addition to great action scenes like the jumping through the helicopter with the blades going, but that you get these little quieter character moments where you see Sam fighting with his sister. Those scenes in the show where you get the sense of decades worth of family fights in little stunted conversations where, let's not have this fight again.
No, those moments with family that I didn't even know he had a sister, and then you get to have these moments and you find out they got a boat. And it's just wonderful to get to know our heroes that we already love, but now we've got even more reason to love them because they're grounded and more human. And that's really what we like, is good old flawed characters that rise above their flaws and become the noble, righteous thing that we all love.
Well, the hero's journey. There we go.
Now, here's the one question before we sign off, Jim, is what if this changes everything. What if Disney Plus makes so much money because of new subscribers? It's the highest rated show they've ever had, launching right out of the gate. I think that trend will continue as long as they keep up good, tight storytelling. But then if you look and something happens with Black Widow and it doesn't launch right away, their movie division starts, I don't want to say souring, but what if they start going, hey, maybe we should make our next, not Avengers, maybe it is a new Avengers movie, but what if we make that Avengers the TV show instead? Because we just make so much damn more money on Disney Plus subscriptions than what we've been able to make, because the world is still recovering from COVID for the next year, 2 years, whatever.
I hate to say this, but I think these conversations are already happening in executive suites all over Hollywood. For example, if you look at Paramount Plus and how much of the Star Trek franchise, I mean, there was supposed to be the Star Trek 4 that Quentin Tarantino supposedly wrote a script for it. And all plans for Star Trek theatrical releases are on hold now because this now has become such a money generator for subscription streaming services. And
they're doing, like, I think a Bold New World is the Adventures of Captain Pike and Spock.
There we go.
So,
there we go.
Yeah, I mean, they are leaning that way. And, you know, kind of like what I was saying before is that with the CBS, you do the new seasons of Discovery, whatever, and we get your money right now, and then 2 years from now, we'll run season 1 on traditional CBS, the channel. 2
bites of the same apple. So.
Yeah, exactly. So I just wonder if theatrical is hurting, and it's not, the theater's fault. It's just COVID and the world, but a business is going to react or it's going to die. And I just wonder if they start moving some of their storytelling where they realize we can have these beats that we couldn't have in a movie, and people are giving us gobs of money to watch long-form television every week. I think if they pack the calendar, I'll never cancel my subscription ever. And especially if you double that with Star Wars on the backside of, they're just getting going with Mandalorian. They've got 100 other things that they want to put on. So, I can't wait for the world where I'm just watching Mandalorian and then WandaVision Season 2 and then the Books of Boba Fett and then Falcon and Winter Soldier. Just, keep it coming. Keep it coming. I don't need to go to a theater for any of my entertainment anymore. I'm good at home.
Well, now, that said, though, I guess as we bring the show to a close here, it's worth noting that for a short couple of years there, Avengers Endgame was the top grossing film of all time. However, earlier this month, James Cameron's Avatar was released to theaters in China, but that made enough money to reclaim the throne, so to speak, to become the top grossing film in Hollywood history. And what was genuinely cool, and this is kind of a tradition that now goes back to when Titanic surpassed the original Star Wars as the highest grossing film of all time in Hollywood at that point. And there was this wonderful trade ad Lucasfilm had made of all of the Star Wars characters, but on the sinking Titanic, and they paid tribute to James Cameron as he took the title. And I think Cameron did much the same thing when Endgame took the title back, but just this past week, when Avatar became once again the top grossing film in Hollywood history, the folks at Marvel went out of their way to pay tribute to Cameron and producer John Lando and all of the Na'vi Nation for reclaiming the box office crown. And they ended their ad with "We Love You 3000." And Anthony and Joe Russo, the directors of Endgame, get a kind of a fun nod to the Infinity Gauntlet. They said to Cameron and crew, "We pass the gauntlet back to you."
Well, since Disney owns both Fox and Marvel, what a lovely story of how Disney just handed themselves a trophy. And well, Disney, you did so well by re-releasing this in a place that has no other entertainment that they will actually watch a 15-year-old movie. Congratulations, here's this trophy. Well, thank you, Disney. That's so kind of you to make this trophy and hand it to me. I know it took many artists many hours to draw it and write this beautiful message so that I can receive it on behalf of myself. Let me break my arm as I pat myself on the back real good. That felt nice. Everybody applaud my greatness. Go ahead, applaud my greatness. I deserve it. As Sally Field once said, "You love me. You really love me." And scene.
And this is why I so enjoy doing this show with Aaron Adams. Okay. Well, anyway.
This edition of Mud has been brought to you by Mudslide, the preferred drink of one of the hosts of Marvelous Disney.
Well, on that graceful note, if you enjoyed listening to today's show, I want to point out we do have a number of other shows here at the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. We have Disney Dish with Len Testa, which, by the way, I want to point out that just last week we took our amazing Bandcamp exclusive show that Len and Aaron worked so hard on, the 1978 version of the American Adventure script, and we took it out from behind the paywall to make it available to everyone. And it's been so nice to have so many people acknowledge how much they enjoyed that, and what a great job you and Len did on that, Aaron. But yeah, we have that. We also have Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor, writing a new Universal joint, which Justin Fuse and I should be recording shortly. Anyway, folks, if you could do Aaron and I a favor, if you get over to Bandcamp and subscribe, that would be incredibly helpful. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram as Jim Hill Media, and over on Facebook as Jim Hill Media News. And I think that's going to do it for now, Aaron. I guess you and I will regroup after we get to see the next couple episodes of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which, as I mentioned, I can't wait to see where this goes.